Okay, and continuing on the topic of the SDGs, we now have Richard Ellis, Vice President, Corporate Social Responsibility at Walgreens Boots Alliance. Richard has been a long-time member of the Ethical Corporation Board and was actually involved in the first ever Ethical Corporation event, physical event, and now I'm pleased to say he's involved in our first ever virtual event. So welcome, Richard, and thank you for joining me for this 15-minute discussion.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
So it's part of the current discussion at the moment. We, as alluded to, we've been talking around how business can be a kind of a central catalyst to helping ensure that the recovery that we have post COVID-19 is in line, is an SDG recovery, one that has the SDG, the 17 goals, front and center. And, Achim Steiner was just talking then about the need to mobilize both business and finance behind the SDGs. But obviously from your perspective, during this pandemic, there's been a whole raft of challenges and issues to work through. So has your SDG work still retained its importance within Walgreens Boots Alliance?
Yes, it still has retained its importance. I'd be lying if I said that it was the most crucial things that we were doing, but clearly COVID-19 has dominated the business landscape for the past 3 months. But from our point of view, the SDGs remain really crucial to the overall sustainability debate that's happening, because the SDGs give us a universal language that everybody can understand. And in particular, it's broader than just our people, it's all of our stakeholders. Everybody knows the SDGs, they know what they stand for. And in many ways, the SDGs describe a better world that we'd all like to think that we could live in the future. And it gives us some sort of hope that things will get better. And it's very much a uniting aspect of the SDGs, the fact that NGOs, governments, businesses, academics, media, everybody knows what they are, everybody understands them. So it's much easier to use that sort of language. And I think above all, SDG 17 talks about collaboration. And I think that if you look at COVID-19, the importance of collaboration in terms of the way that we've tackled it is absolutely crucial. And collaboration is critical to the SDGs in terms of the way that we move forward.
You talked there obviously around the collaborative effort externally, as we've seen over the past few months. I might want to look internally first and foremost. And firstly, sorry, I should have preempted our discussion. We are taking questions via Slido.com. So do submit your questions, and we'll get through them as many as we can in the next 12 or 13 minutes. But from your perspective, obviously internally, over the past 3 months, whilst talking to the board about the pandemics and its impact on Walgreens Boots Alliance, how have you been shaping this work as well alongside those discussions? Because obviously there's been things that are front and center in terms of business survival and recovery in some respects, and changing of systems. But as you say there, it might not have been front and center, but it still needed to be part of that conversation. So how did you frame that maybe alongside the more business critical discussions?
I suppose in a sense, the way that we have as a company tackled COVID-19 is very much encapsulated in the SDGs, in the sense that it's about our role within society and the communities that we serve. How can we help? It's about looking after our people. It's about the impact that we're having on those that we come into contact with. And the responses that we've had have very much mirrored what we were doing previously to make the SDGs become a part of the fabric of the company. So I think in many ways, the SDGs have helped us in terms of the way that we've been framing our response to COVID-19. And I think it comes back to, as I said before, is the language. The language of the SDGs is very easy for people to understand. And so therefore it makes it easy for us when we are talking to all of our stakeholders about COVID-19 to think about the SDG principles.
And you touched upon there, kind of stakeholders. Are you seeing any particular SDG that's resonating more at the moment? Yeah, any of them? Because obviously there's 17 goals, and is it from your work and your engagement with stakeholders, ones that seem to be more resonating, more relevant now in your work, and maybe ones with your companies that you're collaborating with?
I mean, I think SDG 3 about health is clearly centre stage with COVID. But I think because of the impact that it's had upon the economy, then SDG 8, which deals with work, is becoming more and more important, because if the country is going to recover, then people are going to have to focus on decent work, and the country is going to have to enjoy economic growth. So I think that one's becoming much more an important focus for a much broader cross section of organisations around the world. And I think that collaboration again is absolutely key in the sense that we've been able to tackle COVID-19 by collaborating with a range of other organisations, whether it's us working with the National Health Service to test people for COVID-19 in our car park at Nottingham. These are the sorts of things that make a huge difference, and I think it points the way to looking at perhaps other challenges that are going to lie ahead. And by that I mean things like climate change. Many people regard COVID-19 as a dress rehearsal for climate change. Climate change is clearly going to have a much bigger and more prolonged impact upon the planet. And I think that if we can learn some lessons from COVID-19 and take them forward into other potential areas of risk for the world, then perhaps we might be in a good position. I'm always aware of what the military are always doing. They're always preparing for wars that they hope will never happen. And perhaps what COVID-19 has done is shown that we ought to be thinking a little bit more about how do we prepare for pandemics such as this. Because if you look, it wasn't so long ago that there was the Ebola potential crisis. Fortunately, it didn't develop and become a worldwide pandemic in the same way that COVID-19 did, but it perhaps suggests that this is going to become much more part of the fabric of society as the world develops, and particularly as we impact upon the biodiversity of the world. You only need to look at China and how some of the cities have developed, and effectively they have changed the biodiversity of that area. And I think in a sense you might look at it as nature's way of fighting back.
And I've just had a question come through on Slido, and it's an interesting one. It actually comes up quite a bit. In our events and our research is, companies and governments and other institutions' actions on the SDG, isn't always positive. There can be unintended consequences. You talk about SDG 8, where work is central to it, and there is a recovery effort there, but there is a risk that we can potentially blindly cause impact or negative impact on other SDGs. So I know, it's quite a big, I suppose, question in some respects, but how do you face that conundrum when enacting your work within Walgreens Boots Alliance? How do you try to ensure that you are looking out for the unintended consequences, and there aren't, say, inequalities or adverse impact from pursuing particular projects or collaborations?
I mean, I think if the SDGs were the sole contributor to our CSR sustainability strategy, then I think that could be the case. I think from our point of view, the SDGs are simply one part of what we use to develop our overall strategy. Clearly, we have to think about the commercial realities of life. There's no point in simply following blindly the SDGs and forgetting about, you know, what the business of the company is. Equally, we make commitments as a business, and we have to keep those commitments in mind when we are developing our strategies. There's the ongoing stakeholder dialogue that we have, and the materiality assessment that we undertake as part of the Global Reporting Initiative work that we do. And I think having a network of critical friends, such as yourself, and we chat about how our strategy is developing, so that we're able to try and get a balance as we set the company's goals and the objectives for the future.
Okay, and I know we touched upon it at the beginning, and I'm conscious of time here, so I wanted to bring this question in. And you know, you and I, you know, we've alluded to, you know, we catch up regularly and speak to, you know, the work we're doing at Ethical Corporation and the work you're doing at Walgreens Boots Alliance. And one of the things that comes up is a number of times of the collaboration work that you guys are enacting on the key issues. You know, during this, you know, really troublesome time, I imagine some of your partners have, you know, really been at the kind of you know, really felt the impact of the pandemic. So how have you been maybe both engaging and even potentially supporting these partners during the pandemic? Because obviously that's important. It's not just when the times are good to be there with them. It's, you know, when the times are hard, so to say, or times are bad.
I mean, it's a two-way thing. I mean, we've wanted to gain access to things like hand sanitizer. And so we've worked with our suppliers so that some of them have changed their production schedules so that we can have more hand sanitizer. So it is a two-way thing. It isn't just us trying to find ways of helping and supporting our suppliers through all of these difficult times. It's them working to help us. And I think this is the true nature of collaboration. And I think that from our point of view, we'd like to think that we're building stronger and more secure links with our suppliers that mean that as we go forward, we will have better relationships, and that will help us in terms of the way in which we operate and trade as a company. So those relationships become less adversarial, should we say, and more mutually supportive of each other. And I think that we've been delighted with the way that our suppliers have responded to our requests for help, and in the same way we've endeavoured to help our suppliers, because we can see that COVID is going to be a temporary thing, or at least we hope it is, and so therefore we want to resume relationships with businesses with whom we've had relationships for over 100 years.
Okay, Richard, unfortunately, I'm being told that's all we have time for. It has flown by, and as always, it's a pleasure talking to you. But one thing I took from that throughout, you talked to the importance of the partnership, the collaborative work, and that's something that's been echoed in the sessions before. So you know, it's great to hear, you know, that you're doing well and you're pushing on, and you know, you're working, still continue that work on the many initiatives being linked with the SDGs and others that you have within the business. So thank you for joining us, Richard, and as always, it's a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you very much, Liam. Cheerio, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.